Hi, this is David McCann for WebTNG. In this video, I'm looking at a newish page builder called Droip. It's from the Themium team, and I think it was released version 1 about a year and a half ago. Version 2, which was a big update, was released this year. What I'm going to do in the video is I'm going to do a tour, and then I will create a custom post type and add some custom fields to it using Droip, and then I'll create the single and archive template for the custom post type. I think that'll give a pretty good sense of Droip, the kind of things it brings to the table. At the end of the video, we'll have some discussion and conclusions. Here we are on the Droip website. If we look at the features, it has a visual builder, grids and layouts, topography, a form builder, a pop-up builder, a content manager. This is something we'll be looking at. Interaction and animation, a media manager, SEO, accessibility, and Figma to Droip. So if you're working with Figma, bringing your designs into the builder is supposed to be very easy. Under resources, the blog has some articles about different features, and then the documentation is fairly extensive. I think they could use some more videos on how to use the builder, but the documentation touches on, I think, pretty much most of the different areas. If we look at the pricing, we see that there is a 1-site annual license for $34.50, a 10-site annual license for $74.50, an unlimited annual license for $149.50, and then there's an unlimited lifetime update and support package, which is $299.50. So that's actually a fairly decent price. I'm going to go to a testing site that I've set up. I'm using the free Cadence theme here. And if we go to plugins, you'll see that I have WP Vivid free version set up for refreshing the site between testing cycles, and then the Droip plugin. So it installs as a plugin, not as a theme. You can use it with a theme. I believe you're able to create headers and footers, and as we'll see, you can create templates. So you may be able to use any theme as a placeholder. You get this menu item here, form data, which is empty, and then settings. Okay, I've already entered my license. So you have general settings here. You can enable smooth scroll. They have built-in image optimization, so it'll convert images to a WebP format. The option to upload SVG files and upload JSON files. There are a few integrations here. You can enter your OpenAI key. There's Unsplash and Pexels and reCAPTCHA. There is a role manager. You can share a view-only link to the site. I guess you would do this when it's under development because it says disable for a live production site. There's the option to export data and import data. And when you do this, it's going to export all pages, content, images, icons, and other resources. And so I guess this would replace maybe a backup and migration plugin. And I already entered the license. When you first come into Droip, the only option here is to create a new page. Once we create a page, there's also a button link here to go into the editor. But we need to start out and create a new page. Okay, and then you get a tour. You see it has all dots here, and it goes through different areas in the editor to tell you what they are. We're going to do that manually, so I'm just going to turn this off here. This is where you see the name of the page and draft. Something to keep in mind is by default, everything is saved as a draft, and you have to take an extra step to publish. So I missed that and went to the front end to look at something it wasn't showing. It's because I hadn't published it. When you click the Droip icon here, these are different parts of the UI that you can look at. We're going to look at these. It's kind of interesting. You can install a font locally. the onboarding wizard. These are the keyboard shortcuts, or you can go out of the editor and back to the WordPress admin. Here is where you add elements, right? So these are the elements, kind of thing you would expect, not a huge number, but a decent number of elements, pre-designed sections, pre-designed pages, symbols, which I think are kind of like components. There's a shape library, some icons, different buttons, pre-designed buttons, some pre-designed tab layouts, pre-designed card layouts, pre-designed forms, like if you want a contact form or some of the others. Then this shows you the layers, and we'll be using this. Okay, so this is like your page structure. This is the pages interface that's important. Here you can search. You see it says new Droip page, and it's kind of grayed out a little bit. Has the yellow dot indicating that it's a draft. You can see the sample page here, and you can see privacy policy. There's an option when you click on a page with content to bring that content into the editor here. So you can import, I guess it would be Gutenberg content that way. There's variables mode, which I think will give you kind of light and dark mode. Then there's page settings, right? You can change the title, the slug, the description. This is where I've been going to set it to published. SEO settings. You can add custom code, header and footer code. Okay. Then you can duplicate, rename, preview, export, import, or delete. Okay. Then this is the media library. You can upload your files, trash, the icon library, clip path and shapes, right? We looked at some of those things. This is classes, which is kind of interesting that they surface the classes this way. We'll actually come in and modify one of these. It's kind of interesting how they did that, and they're named so that it makes sense kind of when you're looking to change some default behavior. So here you can create variables for numbers. I think that's sizing, font families, and color schemes. Then there's dev mode. You can select an element and go in and look at the code and adjust that. There are templates here, pre-designed templates. Some of these are full sites, like 8 pages on some of them. And then they're in categories: portfolio, agency, SaaS, food and drink. Then content manager, we're going to go into the content manager and take a look at that. We have apps, which is kind of interesting. This is where you would do some integration, maybe for a form if you want to send to Mooseend, or here's Thrive Desk, or other options there. Then here's light and dark mode. This is the help area. This is the documentation. And this takes you back to the settings page in the admin. Okay, if we go across the top here, we have our responsive breakpoint previews, and you can create a custom breakpoint. I think that cadence is 1280, so I'm going to set that there. You can scale the view, right? You can search, you can audit, which gives you a few accessibility checks. Then there's accessibility here, which does a few additional items. This is preview. It automatically saves, I guess WordPress heartbeat, and then you can manually click on this to save. Okay, over here then you have the element styling. You can add classes. This is the default state, the hover state, the focus state. There are structure options here. This would be margins, this would be padding. Okay, you can set what type of structure it is. There's sizing, there's typography, and there are some more settings there if you need those. There's background, border, position, effects, okay, and interactions. So that's kind of the tour there. Let's go now and create a custom post type. I'm going to tell you that even though there is some documentation, this was a little bit of a puzzler. I think I figured out what to do here. I could have missed a few things along the way, but I think I've got the overall process down. You go into Content Manager and you create a new content type, which they call collections. So like I guess posts would be a built-in collection or pages. And they have some pre-made ones, which is kind of nice, you know, like team members or portfolio projects. Some of those things are standard that a lot of people use on a lot of sites. Okay, but I'm going to do new collection. I'm going to call it books. Now you have to give a slug, or they ask you for a slug here. So title is required, book title, and then slug, we'll leave it as slug. Then we add custom fields. So the first custom field I'm going to add will be book author. And default value, you can have help text, default value, character limit, or make it required. Okay, then I'm going to add, let's add an image. And so we'll say book cover image. Can restrict the formats. Note that it doesn't have SVG there. You can set size limitations. Let's move this one up here. We can add a rich text field here, and this will be the book review, which would be like the content, I guess. And then let's add a URL field, and this will be a link to author website. Okay, and so let's see, we have title, we have image, we have the book author, we have the book review, the content, we have a link to the author website. I guess we want to add a genre, or, you know, like a taxonomy. And I don't see a taxonomy option. Now, it's possible you create another collection for that. I don't know. Or you notice that there's a reference and a multi-reference. A reference is a one-to-one link between two post types, and then a multi-reference is a many-to-one. So I don't know if you would create a multi-reference maybe for taxonomy. That's something I didn't see it in the documentation, but probably could be a solution. Since I don't have that, let's see if instead of text, maybe we add, is there a select? There's option. I don't see a select, a drop down. So I'm just going to do text. Okay, and we'll call this genre. I've created my custom post type, aka a collection. So let's create it. And now we have it here. There's the settings where you can change the name, you can duplicate, you can delete it. Okay, you can also go into the settings, you can add the fields or change the fields. Okay, but what I'm going to do is click on here and then add an item. I'm going to add, copy and paste some information here. So the Whistler, John Grisham is the author. Here's some placeholder text here. Let's add an image, upload. Looking for the Whistler. Add. Okay, link to author website. And genre would be legal thriller. Okay, then I save it. I think it's done. This is the place where it got me before, but this is actually a draft. So you want to go publish. Okay, and now it's published. All right, so let's see. Let's add another one. Go to, I don't see a button here to add another one, so let's go back here and add new. So I'm going to add 2 more. I'll pause the video while I do that and then be back in just a minute. Okay, so I've entered 3 books here, and I did try when I entered them. I didn't type in the slug manually, and it generated that automatically, so I was happy to see that. So we have our custom post type now with a few records. Okay, now the next step is to create the templates. There's no kind of back here, so I'm going to click here, okay, to go back. And now what we want to do is we want to create a template. So I think we go to this pages option here, click the plus sign and template. A little bit hidden there, but let's create it. And so it wants us to select our collection and books, and we'll add template. Okay, and it named it book single for us automatically, so that's good. And up here it tells us what template we're working on. Here you can select what you want to use for the preview. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to elements. I'll add a section, and in the structure I'm going to give this auto, and we'll put this at, let's say, 50 pixels at the top and 50 at the bottom. And then let's add a flex, which I guess is our columns. Okay, and then in this one, we'll add an image. So you can see, there's grid, there's stack, there's div, container, there's heading, paragraph, list, list item, button, link, rich text, there's image, video, Lottie, icon, shape, there's form, a label, an input, text area. These are form elements. Then there's a light box, a navigation, a slider, a tabs, a map, a code, element, a collection, and a drop down. So we want the image. And when I click on it here, there is a database icon. So I'm going to pick post, and we'll want a book cover image. So now let's go to the structure panel and flex item. Let's give it a size of maybe 25%. Is that going to help us? And then we'll give the image itself a size, let's say width 260 px. Okay, so I picked that up. And then the height, we'll say 360 px. Then in this column, flex item, we'll add a heading, be H1, and this will be our title. And then we'll add under that the author's name. So another heading, here's where you could do a smaller heading, decoration, give it an ID, ARIA label. Okay, but we want to go and do post. And here we want book author. Then let's add a text element. Let's do paragraph. And we'll go and make this the book review. Then we will add button item. Okay, and so we'll change the wording on here to visit author website. And let's do the dynamic data and link to author website. All right, I guess that's the link because it didn't change the text. Here, let's see, we need some spacing. We lost that. So let's go to our Flex container and gap. Let's say 20 pixels and 20 pixels. Okay, there are other alignment options there. Let's make the gap a little more. All right, so now let's save. You can't publish from there. So I think what we have to do is, and notice, we're in draft mode still. This is the preview. If we go there, it doesn't give us a preview of what we're working on, so that's kind of disappointing. Okay, but let's go back to pages, the template, and go to settings and publish. So maybe there's an easier way to publish, but this gets the job done. Okay, now let's try preview, and there we go. Let's go back into the editor. I thought I had set the width at 1280 there. Maybe that's just the largest breakpoint. I'm not sure. So I guess that's not the width. So I'll set that back to 1440. And I will go to the section. Let's set the maxed width to 1280. All right, and save. Let's go back and refresh. All right, there's our single template, kind of a simplified one. Let's click that. Does that work? Yep, we go to the author's website, so that's good, but we see we have a little problem here when we hover. All right, so let's go back into the editor. Let's go to the classes, find a button. Here's the button. Okay, so here's the default state. Here is the hover state. So let's add color. All right, and save. Go back here, let's refresh. Okay, so we got to see a little bit about the default classes there. Thought this way of presenting the classes was kind of cool. I like that. So now let's do the archive. Okay, I'm going to go back to pages and let's add a new page. Actually, here's this. I didn't actually mean to bring that up there. What I wanted to do was rename it. This will be book reviews. I guess this is how you create the archive. So we're in book reviews. Let's resave. Let's reload that. So now let's make this a single page. Let's add a section element and a container. Let's go to section and we'll repeat here. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and do this, but let's look here. Okay, I think possibly with classes, Wonder if there is a section. Oh, okay. So anyway, there's our section and has a container. So inside the container, let's add an element, and there's an element called collection. So let's go to the settings for the collection. We want it to be books, no relationship. We don't need pagination. We don't need to filter or sort. Can sort on a field, so that's nice, or filter on a field. Then here, what I want to do is add a section. Oh, actually, let's add a card. Let's add this one. Okay, so we'll go to the image and let's set it as a book cover image. Okay, let's give that a height and width of 260 px and a height of 360 px. Okay, let's go to this and we'll make this an H3 and we'll set it to post term comment menu user, and this will be post title, and then we'll go to this one, and this one will be the book author. Then we'll go here, it says shape, let's go to the structure. Okay, it's in a link wrapper, so let's do go post link. Now let's go to our structure. Let's have some gap. Let's save and let's go back to pages, settings, publish, save. Okay, let's go out of Droip, go to the admin. Let's go to menus. Okay, we'll create a menu called main. We'll add the book reviews page that shows up there. Then let's add another item to the menu. Custom link. Save. Okay. There is our page there. I'm just curious. It doesn't say like edit with Droip or anything. So that would be interesting. It does say here template full Droip full canvas. So let's go to the home page. Let's go to book reviews. Here's our information here, but let's just go and see. Okay, that goes to the single. All right, so kind of a simple example here, the single template and an archive template for a custom post type. I think it's enough for you to get the idea of the workflow. So now let's have some discussion and conclusions. Droip is from the Themium team, who make the popular Tutor LMS plugin. They also made the Quibbly Gutenberg block collection, which back when it was first released, it was one of the better options. Unfortunately, around the time of COVID, the company felt the need to cut back and new development on Quibbly was stopped. That was kind of a bummer, but to their credit, they gave Quibbly users a license for Droip. So kudos to them for taking care of their customers. I've been meaning to take a look at Droip since version 2 came out. I like to follow what's new and recognize creativity and innovation. So let's talk about the pros and cons, starting with the cons. It's cool that Droip has its own UI for creating custom post types and custom fields, but the main question I was left with was their portability. The custom post types don't show, for instance, in the admin as a menu item, as they do when you create them with ACF or MetaBox. WordPress is, after all, a content management system, so it feels odd they've separated it out. I guess if your content type doesn't have a ton of records, say a dozen or less, then this isn't a big deal because you can just copy the data over. But if you have lots of records, then it seems like there might be some lock-in. In terms of dynamic data, I didn't see an option for custom taxonomies, but maybe that was named something else. On a more minor level, after entering a record for a collection, aka custom post type, there wasn't a button to add another record. You had to click on the collection again, leave the entry form, click to add a new item, and then enter the form again. Also, it seemed like you needed to dig a bit to get to the publish option for pages, and getting to the menu item to add a single custom post type template was also buried. These aren't big deals or showstoppers, but they are refinements that I would have expected to see taken care of by now. On the plus side, the UI was snappy and I didn't see any lag. There was a decent set of elements, and for the most part the layout and styling settings made sense and worked fine. I like the way that Droip surfaced their classes with a way where you could tweak them. That felt intuitive. I kind of expected to see some CSS variables being used there, but I didn't try out that feature. Also, the shapes library is a nice idea. There are a good number of shapes to use to add to the canvas or as a mask, and that's nice. The developers of Droip seem to have in mind to add some features which would take the place of some plugins. The image optimization, WebP conversion, for instance, as well as the ability to create custom post types and custom fields. I'm not sure if you noticed, but they also present a custom interface for the media library. There are several big features of Droip that I didn't explore, what they call symbols, but are apparently components. These might be interesting and could be useful. There is also a pop-up builder and a form builder. These potentially provide the functionality of 2 additional plugins that might not be needed. In a number of ways, Droip tries to be innovative. They did something new and didn't just repeat the same old UI. Being different has its pros and cons. If developers never try anything new, then we don't get any progress. But on the other hand, doing it differently should have a good reason, because otherwise it just introduces an extra learning curve. Overall, my first take of Droip is that it's a capable builder that can get the job done, but could use some more refinement, and that some things are different without necessarily being better. So that's my walkthrough of creating a custom post type and creating templates to display it. I hope you found the video interesting and useful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.